What's up, guys?
Hi guys!
So we're back with another video. Not like our typical adventure videos. We wanted to jump on here to talk to you guys about how we plan our trips.
Super casual. We just wanted to chat with you guys and answer some questions that we get often about how we plan our road trips and what it looks like on the back end of things before we head out. So yeah, we thought it would be really fun just to sit down and chat about it. I definitely feel like we have some tips and tricks that we can share with you guys that help us plan, help us budget, things like that. It's not for everyone. This type of trip planning is not for everybody. So, you know, we understand that, but we also think we could help a lot of people out.
If you're wanting a relaxing trip, this is probably not the way.
Yeah, maybe don't do it this way.
But this one's an adventure.
Yes. So to start it off, we want to first talk about how we choose where we're going.
So typically it's just pretty simple where we want to go. If you know, we have a place in mind.
It can be as simple as that.
It can just be as simple as that. But there definitely are some influencing factors. So typically we will say, hey, we really want to do a fall trip. What are some really cool destinations for fall? And we'll get online, we'll Google some different places that are really popular for fall. Michigan is a really popular destination for fall. I've heard Minnesota is really cool. There's also, you know, the Smoky Mountains that are really cool. And then the most popular is New England, the New England trip that we did. And so then we'll be like, okay, well, let me see if there's any flight deals for those time periods for us to go to those places. So we'll get online, check around prices, and flying to New York from Atlanta is really cheap. And so we're like, oh, well, let's do this. This is the most popular spot. Flying to New York from Atlanta on the flight that we take is about $65. So let's do it.
Yeah.
And that's pretty simple. Well, we try to keep it seasonal. For the most part, we typically try to be conscientious, however you say that word. We try to be conscious of being there maybe a little bit before peak season or maybe a little bit after, so that way we're not getting peak prices always for, you know, stays and whatnot.
Well, and a lot of times we want to be able to share with you guys ahead of time so that we can also get the info out to you before the season starts. But do you want to jump into the flight deals that we kind of follow?
Yeah. So listen to this. We go crazy on flight deals. We've never flown like Frontier or Spirit or JetBlue or any of the more like budget friendly. We will typically try to fly Southwest. We really like Southwest just because you get 2 checked bags for free. So if Megan and I have to do like photos for a brand or something like that, and we have all of this camera gear, well, Megan and I can both bring 2 full checked bags, 50 pounds each, so basically 100 pounds each of luggage on these trips.
And a lot of times we are shooting content on trips, so almost every trip we are working with at least a brand. And that means we're packing a lot more extra. We also plan our outfits to be something that we share too on trips, and so we overpack. We always willingly overpack, and that's not for everybody. So that's something that works for us because we know we overpack, which might not be the case for someone who just wants to bring a carry-on.
So we typically fly Southwest, but listen to this. So I got a Southwest credit card a few years ago because they had this deal where if you spent like $3,000 or $2,000 within the first 3 months, you got like 30,000 flight miles. And I was like, oh man, I definitely can do that. We'll just pay our bills with that card, and we did that easily. So we got 30,000 miles in flights, and then every time you use it, you rack up points. Well, Southwest, for the past couple of years, they've done 2 flight deals per year. So at the beginning of the year, they'll do 40% off on most flights with Southwest, and then halfway through the year, they'll do it again, 40% off. And that is significant. You can save so much money. And then on top of that, having your points and, you know, using your credit card and all that stuff. So for the past year, we will have taken 6 flights and total spent $250 per person, total. So this will include Washington State, California, New York, and New York again, Arizona, and Miami. Total amount of money for a couple, we spent $500.
Not per flight. out of all of that.
Out of all the flights, 6 flights.
Yeah.
But if you are, we know that there are a lot of people that really like Delta, and we don't fly Delta as much, not because we have anything against it. It just Southwest tends to work for us. But I know that if you do have a Delta credit card, you do get 1 checked bag for free. But they also have really good prices too.
Yeah, and we totally understand the luxury of Delta, and really our biggest thing is affordable, easy flights, and that we can, really book the places, the destinations we love to go to.
Yeah. For me, I'm always like, well, I'm probably just going to be like knocked out on the flight anyway, so I don't really care as long as it gets us there.
Yeah, so that's really something that influences how we book. If we're not deciding to just directly plan to go to one place, like with our upcoming trips, so we've got 3 upcoming trips in the next few months, and that was something that really helped us pick. We knew there were flight deals, and then we jumped on there and we're looking at different destinations that we might be interested in and seeing the flight prices and the differences, the amount of time that we could be at each place based on the flight prices there and back round trip. And that has a big influence on what we decide.
Yeah. You can always go to kayak.com and compare prices, but I will say if you go to kayak.com, Southwest doesn't pop up on there. So you will have to get a different tab on your search engine to compare prices and flights and things like that. And also just always take into account that a lot of times they're not showing how much it's going to cost for a checked bag or to carry on luggage, things like that. So those are things that we always look into, because that can add up. If you ended up paying for a checked bag, $60 round trip, you just added $120 to your flight.
Yep, exactly.
So yeah, that's typically why we lean more in the direction of Southwest, but
it's always been a happy medium for us, really.
Yeah,
so
definitely. All right, so next up is car deals. So typically the one thing that I will say about car deals is that we go onto like kayak.com, we type in the destination, how long we want the car, and we compare car prices like that. That's the easiest way that we've done it. But just a tip. So say that you're looking on that website and Enterprise comes up as like the cheapest car rate on there. Well, you can actually go to enterprise.com and then put in your destination and how long you're going to be there. And honestly, you might probably get it for a cheaper rate on the actual website versus doing it on like kayak.com. So I will always find the cheapest rate, and then I'll go to the actual website to then shop that rate to see if it's still affordable.
Yeah, for sure. We don't do budget traveling necessarily. We don't like have a budget and stick to it for a trip. We do affordable travel. So we're always just looking for the best deals, but never trying to stay like under a certain amount for a trip. And I feel like people kind of get those two confused. So with things like this, we're always just trying to find the best deal, one for us, but also to share with you.
Yeah.
So, and then obviously too, with the car deals and car rentals, we obviously work with Toyota a lot. So we're super thankful for that. That's a way for us to save money and also create some really cool content for one of our favorite brands. So that's something that's been a blessing to us, but there are some really great car deals out there that we constantly were using before we worked with Toyota.
Yeah.
And like James said, you can really shop around and get some really good deals.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so next up, one of the biggest things is going to be routing our trip. We're just going to use our New England trip, for instance, because that was a popular one that people really liked.
Well, and it's also one that really takes a lot of planning. You got to make sure like things are timed out correctly, and this is where like James really shines, and he is so good about like efficiently like going through and finding the best routes. You're just good at that.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah, I do. Honestly, I get a lot of joy out of like planning the trips. It's so fun to kind of like, I feel like it's like a game. So
and map it out, get the timing right and all that.
Yeah, so typically we will say, say we're going to New England and we're like, okay, now I'm going to go on to Google, I'm going to look at different vlogs, I'm going to look at different blogs, and also just kind of see what are some of the top places to see in New England. So when I do a search like that, one of the top places is going to be Vermont. People want to go to Vermont because it's really cool, it's beautiful, the fall leaves are awesome. People are going to want to go to New Hampshire. They want to go to Maine and on the Maine coast. And then a really popular destination was also Salem for all the Halloween and fall stuff, which is really cool. So, okay, now I've got a few destinations in mind that we really want to go. And now I do a little more in-depth search. So, okay, we want to go to Vermont for sure. Where are some of the best towns to visit in Vermont? One of the top towns to visit, Woodstock, Vermont. And then I look into details about that and do another micro search. Okay, what are the top things to see in Woodstock, Vermont? They've got a really cool downtown. Everything's in close proximity, so they have a really cool covered bridge. They've got a really cool hotel. Everything's walkable in the downtown. And they only have a couple of spots within Woodstock where you could actually drive to go see things, and it's really close.
Right.
So then I'm like, okay, well, we only need to be there for probably a day. So we're going to drive from New York to Woodstock, Vermont. We're going to spend there.
We base that off of people's recommendations, vlogs we've watched, and also just the timing between the different locations and places.
And we'll also look up hashtags on like Instagram and stuff.
That's what I was going to get at, yeah. So in the meantime, while he's planning these things, mapping it out on the computer, I'm also on Instagram, I'm on Pinterest, and all the different platforms, really, different social medias, looking at hashtags and locations. So those are like the two biggest things when we're planning out that part of the trip. Where do we want to get photos? What is the top spot, the best places to eat? All of those things you can find so much from searching like the locations hashtag. So say Vermont or Woodstock, Vermont. Look up hashtag Woodstock, Vermont, hashtag Woodstock, hashtag places to visit in New England. I'm constantly looking at that, and you can actually pull it up and you'll see what the top hashtags are for different locations. And then you can search those places from there. And then also actually using the geotag on Instagram and looking under the places, and they've got all the tagged photos from people. So typically that's where you find the best places to go. And then we'll make like a note on our computer, and then we'll just list them all out. So that way we have them, we can, map it. And then you see, where they are on the map.
So one of the biggest features that we use is on My Maps. So you go to google.com and you do My Maps, and you can actually customize a map that you can put different pins on there. You can label it with different colors. You can label it with different little icons, things like that. So that way you can kind of figure out where you want to go. So
that's been huge for us in organizing the trips.
And it's really cool because you can save them and have different names and look back on them and edit them as you go along. But
he can send it to me, and then I can use that while I'm trying to plan out the other things and photos, and so it's just so beneficial for us.
I feel like it's a feature people don't really know about, but I highly recommend it. So if we're going to Woodstock, then I'm going to pin, we want to see the two popular covered bridges there. We want to see the historic Woodstock Hotel. We want to go to the downtown, and we might want to go to one of the farms nearby that has a cool photo spot. So I'm going to pin all of that, and then I'm going to route that on Google Maps and see what the timing looks like. Well, when I do that, it's kind of making sense that we could probably do all this in one day. So we're going to drive up from New York, we're going to go to Woodstock, and we're going to spend one full day in Woodstock. And that's ultimately what we did. We spent a full day there, and we got to see everything that we wanted to see in Woodstock, Vermont. And then it allowed us to then say, okay, well then where do we want to go next? And that was New Hampshire. So if we're going to New Hampshire, then it's going to be like a 2-hour drive. And I typically try to keep our drives between stays under 4 hours. So if we're going from, Woodstock to New Hampshire, there's a stay within 4 hours or less of there. Then we're going to New Hampshire to Maine, it's going to be 4 hours or less from there. And then I do it all over again. Start pinning, we look up places to see. We want to see Franconia Notch, we want to see the Concomagus. I always say it wrong and someone's probably going to correct me. We're going to go on the Concomagus and see all the things along that. Concomagus, who cares, whatever. You know what I mean. And so then we're like, okay, well then we want to spend a certain amount of time there. Then when we went to Bar Harbor, there was way more that we wanted to do. We wanted to see the downtown. There's multiple hikes that we wanted to see.
Yeah, especially the timing of the hikes. If you are planning hikes, obviously you have to account for that taking up a good portion of your day if you go on more than a mile hike.
Yeah.
Or something that's more strenuous, and you've got to allow for that time.
Right. And you know what's a great tool that we use to figure out about those hikes is this app called All Trails.
Yes.
You can actually also use it on the Safari or whatever your web browser is on your computer. So if you go to Acadia National Park on All Trails, you can search by most popular trails, you can search by hardest trails, things like that. So one of the trails that we did was the Precipice Trail. And it's a crazy hike. It's so dangerous. It's crazy. It's one of the most dangerous hikes in the country, and we did it. And you know what? We read all of the reviews. We saw how long it was going to take. We could see the photos of what it looks like.
Yes.
So it made us feel comfortable, and we were like, well, you know what? That might take a fourth of our day or half of our day to do that trail.
Well, and we know we're going to be tired after. Like, we want to make sure we're timing that based on all of those factors.
Yeah. And so then that goes into consideration about how long we want to stay at a place.
A few things that I want to note before you move on to are taking into consideration the sunrise and sunset at each place you're going. So you want to look that up as you're going through and mapping this out, because obviously it's different depending on where you're going, and certain things you want to maybe possibly get at the peak at sunrise because you want to see the top place that you're going to hike at sunrise. So you want to make sure you're timing that out to get there in that amount of time, and you're basing your day around those things. For us, we also really like to shoot specific things, whether it be for a brand, for content, or for just the place that we're going. You want to make sure you're thinking about that when you're wanting to get photos.
Also, when you're visiting these places, top places, you need to look up, do you need reservations? Because since COVID, we've learned a lot of these places, sunrise spots, sunset spots,
especially National Park.
All of these places are now requiring permits or reservations to do that. And that was true when we went to Acadia National Park.
Yes.
The Cadillac Mountain, which is one of the most popular spots in the park for you to see sunrise and sunset, you have to have a reservation. So that was something to consider, and we didn't know that when we went a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And we weren't able to book a sunrise or sunset spot.
Right.
And you know, ultimately we missed out on that, but we still were able to go up there. It just wasn't at the prime time.
Yes, and that's why we always love using this as a guide. We do not get too bent out of shape if we're having to go off track a little bit when we're in the moment. Say because of weather, as you guys have seen, that's really thrown off our trail and our mapping of our things to do, and so you kind of have to go with the flow, and that's why it's good to also have other options on your list of things to do in the area.
Yeah.
So that's when we take that into account. We have those lists with us on our notes app. James normally has a shared notes with us or with me, and so we are able to take a glance at that as we're on the road.
Yeah. It's you know, there's always going to be hiccups along the way, because it's not like, you know, even if you do a simple trip as to going to the beach and just chilling on the beach for 7 days, you can't ever account for the weather. You can't ever account for the way that you're going to feel. And that's the same truth as you're doing these road trips. You can't account for if you have car problems, or if you're feeling really bad, you know, you hurt yourself on a hike, or if the weather's crazy. You can't account for that. So you kind of have to be willing to detour or switch it up along the way.
And that's why we like to have a set thing of something to do in the area, so that we can check back to that and see if there's something we could actually, you know, switch it up and go to. And then another thing I do want to mention on Instagram, a tool that I utilize a lot when we go on these trips for, you know, inspo, for content, or just things to do, the Instagrammable spots or places I want to make sure I get that shot. I actually go in and create a collection with our saved posts. So if you don't know, you can do that. That's what utilizing that saved button on Instagram is for. So I go through and I save anything that I want to save as inspo, or even if someone's put, you know, some recommendations in their caption, I go through and I save those things and create a collection for each trip.
Yeah.
So I'll have that so that I can share with James what shot I want to get or what places we want to see, and then I have that to refer back to while we're on the trip as well.
All right, so the next big thing are booking our stays. So now we have our route that we want to go. We want to see Woodstock, Vermont. We want to go to Lincoln, New Hampshire. We want to go to Bar Harbor. We're going to make it down the Maine coast. We're going to go to Salem. So now we have to find places to stay in these beautiful spots. And what we do is we shop all of the places. We will go on Airbnb, we'll go on VRBO, we go on hotels.com, we go on to booking.com. And I literally shop everything. So I'm looking at, you know, hotels, motels, shared spaces, things like that. We don't really do the shared spaces as much. We typically always try to get our own place, but we have done the thing where, say, you know, you're staying in a separate room at someone's house, but it's blocked off, you don't ever see each other. We will do stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's worked out well for us, but we try to obviously go the other route.
Yeah. So the way that I do it, one of the big things is, so when we did Woodstock, Vermont, I found an Airbnb there, and compared to the hotels and the motels and all of that, there was a little tiny house in Woodstock that made the most sense. It was close in proximity to all the things that we wanted to do. It was affordable, and, you know, gave us everything that we needed. So I booked that. Well, then when we went over to Lincoln, New Hampshire, I searched again, and I actually found a motel in Lincoln on hotels.com. Well, then I was like, well, let me see if it's actually cheaper on the website. So I do the same thing that I do with the cars, and I go to the actual motel or hotel's website and then look at the same dates to see if it's cheaper. And guess what? It was like $200 cheaper to just book through the actual stay. So we saved $200 by doing that. And I will do that for everything. I will, you know, if I find a boutique hotel on Airbnb, then I go to the actual hotel's website to see if it's cheaper, or I call them to see if it's cheaper.
We always shop around for trips. Always.
And I found the same deal when I did it in Bar Harbor. I found that the hotels rates were way cheaper than hotels.com or Airbnb. So yeah, it's a way to save money, and ultimately I feel like when we do this, it ends up saving us, a few $100, maybe $1,000 by doing that.
For sure.
So that's why we're able to take all of these trips. You know, we have jobs that are flexible to allow this, but we also are conscientious enough to, with our stays, with our routes, with all of these things, our flights, to where we're not spending a crazy amount of money, and we're having the opportunity to see as much as we can.
Right. Well, we also like to take that into consideration for you guys too, because we know a lot of people do budget when they're going on vacation, and so we want to make sure we're sharing affordable places for you guys to stay. And we do the same thing on the content side. You know, if we're reaching out to a stay, we want it to be something that we know is going to be good and that you guys are going to be interested in. So that's also something. If we have a stay that we don't like, we either say that in the description here on YouTube, or we say it verbally in the video, or we don't share it if we don't like it. So typically, if we're not sharing a stay, it's because we just didn't, it's not one we want to recommend.
Yeah, we've gotten some sticky situations where we booked places last minute, and that was my bad. And Megan's almost killed me because we've stayed in some nightmares because of me. For sure. So
this guy's wanting to take the cheap route half the time and just like, we'll book something quick. Yeah. And I'm like, no, no, we have options.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. We've had a couple of stinkers for sure. But, stinkers. But for the most part, we've stayed in some really cool ones.
Yes. And we always want to only share with you something that we would actually genuinely recommend. And especially from the content creation side, if we're working with a stay, it's only going to be a stay that we will recommend to you. So same thing for if you're a content creator wanting to work with stays, you can also use that same exact process. Do a little research on the back end and compare prices and think about the price point of stays you want to be sharing with your audience, and utilize Airbnb. And if you see places you like on Airbnb, try to figure out where they are, or if they have a specific name, you could probably look them up on Instagram and find their Instagram. If they have a social media following, or you can see that they need more of a following and you might be able to help, that's a great place to reach out to work with.
But yeah, so that pretty much wraps up our discussion on how we book our trips and how we plan them. And you know, if you guys have any questions about that, if we missed on something that you want more details about, definitely, you know, hit us up in the comments or send us a message on Instagram or TikTok, and we'll be happy to discuss it with you.
Yeah, for sure. And even like if you want to hear more of the financial side of like budgeting for a trip, we can also help with that, even though that's not really how we structure ours.
Yeah, for sure.
So.
All right, so that wraps up our discussion about how we plan our trips, book the flights, stays, routing our trip, all those things.
Yeah, if there's anything you can think of that we might have missed or that you want to know more of, let us know in the comments. And also, if you want to see more videos like this, more informative videos, we would love that. We definitely want to give you more of a variety of these things on our channel this year. That's something we're working towards. So, yeah, let us know what you want to hear more about.
Yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, follow us on Instagram and TikTok.
All the things.
All the things. And we'll see you guys in the next one.
See ya.
This is where I wanna be, nah, nah, nah. Never ever gonna leave, nah, nah, nah. You ain't know you live for me. I'm like, nah, 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 nah. This is where I wanna stay, nah, nah, nah. I could do this every day, nah.